Live to tell my story.
So I always felt like everybody across the world has a story to tell. Everybody has a story to tell. So now I'm about to tell mine. You can call this Live to Tell my story. I'm always talking about other people's journeys and careers. So here I am, Keri D. Singleton, talking about my story. Live to tell my story. And we're going to be back with more from Mark, Paris, and Black Rose on the other side of this one. Keri's going to new home for throwbacks and new jazz. Just cool, Yeah, so how does my story begin? I was born in Boston at Boston City Hospital. That was the broke people's hospital. That was all the people that couldn't go nowhere else to get born. They were born there. Whatever, Boston City Hospital. Denise Singleton, my mom. Robert J. Smith, my dad. I was the first son, first grandson, first nephew, first great-grand, all of that. I was the first on both sides of my family. I was the first. Number one. Roxbury, Massachusetts. Interesting spot, you know, home of New Edition. Ed O.G. and the Bulldogs, Donna Summer. It's the only place really where black people could live when I was coming up, you know, Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, you know, but Roxbury is the hub of the black community in Boston. It's the nucleus of Boston's black community, and that's where I was born and raised. I don't remember much of my very young childhood living at 705 Massachusetts Avenue. I remember pretty much just being maybe like 4 or 5 years old, and you know, having my 4th birthday party. You know, the Afro, of course, it was the 70s, so I wasn't the only one. You know, I don't know why, but in the 70s, you know, kids always had to wear suits. Black parents always wanted their kids to look extra super sharp. I remember my 4th birthday party having to wear a suit. Like a suit, Mom? Really? Like a suit? The double-breasted suit. My parents got separated when I was about 6 years old, 6 or 7 years old, and my mother wanted to be as far away from Boston as possible. She just wanted to change. You know, the weather. You know, Boston was pretty rough back then. You know, the substandard housing in Roxbury. You know, it was a gritty place in the 70s. Roxbury was, like most northern cities. You know, Boston's ghettos were no different. You know. And we moved out to the suburbs, Alief, which was then a suburb of Houston. You know, we lived in Alief for a couple of years. Beautiful, you know, like I said, great schools. And the next thing I know, Mom and myself and her boyfriend at the time, we headed to Philadelphia. It was crazy, man, coming from the beautiful, tranquil suburbs of Houston, where the elementary schools look like college campuses, and my first words to my mom was just like, why do they have bars on their windows, man? It was just crazy, man. It's definitely a different experience, and going to school here in Southwest Philly was definitely an experience, Comedies. We lived there for about a year. Real small block. A lot of row houses, everything was packed together. It was rough. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, we was living rough, and I mean, you know, food, and we was doing but bad enough that you know, after living a year in Philadelphia with my mother and her boyfriend at the time, you know, we had to be out, and we moved back to Boston. It was good to be back there with my grandparents and closer to my family and my dad and everything. And but we moved into this real tall building, it's called the Ivory Tower. It was, at the time, it was almost pretty new. We lived on the 25th floor of this tall building. at 35 North Hampton Street in Boston. Here we are on the 25th floor of 35 North Hampton Street, where I used to live when I was a kid. I used to love this view. This used to be my television right here, the whole city of Boston. You can see the whole city from up here. Most entertaining thing in the world to see the planes taking off from the airport, to look at the ocean, Boston Harbor, to watch the trains, you know, run through the streets of Boston. At the time, they ran above the streets, and just watch the city come alive. And I think that it was around that time period that I began to have a love for writing. And I remember submitting a poem called "Boo and Simon Sue," some story that I wrote about some ghost that was running around the hood in Boston or whatever. And actually, the story got picked to be one of the finalist stories in the newspaper. And at 10 years old, to see my name in the newspaper, Keri Singleton of Boston, and my little story about some ghost that was running around terrorizing the neighborhood. I mean, I think that was really the catalyst that inspired me to want to become a writer. So at 10 years old, living on the 25th floor of 35 North Hampton Street, that's where that spark came for me. Seeing my name in the paper, not only to just want to be a writer, but I think, to be honest with you, I think that's the moment when I realized I wanted to kind of be like a little star or something. I wanted to be, you know, I wanted to see my name in print from that point forward. So it all started for me, the music thing anyway, with this group called the Sly Five. So New Edition, of course, Bobby Brown, Ralph Tresvant, Ricky Bell, Mike Bivens, and Ronnie DeVoe. They was everything. Every kid in Roxbury wanted to be like New Edition, you know, with the tight blue pants and, you know, doing the choreography and the Jerry curls. Maybe not the Jerry curls, but every kid in Roxbury, they was everything to us. New Edition was. They was it, you know. They came from the same neighborhood as us. They came from Roxbury, and they blew up, you know. And again, this was also the era where breakdancing came into play. And so me and a couple of kids from my neighborhood came up with this group called the Sly Five. I was, of course, the only boy in the damn group. Not a bad thing, because you get all the attention when you're the only guy.
I was the muscle and the clown. Well, we all were clowns. Keri was the intelligent clown. You know, we always turned to him when we wanted to plot a plan against somebody or something. But all in all, my man Keri, that's my brother. That's my brother from another mother. I love him to death. I wouldn't trade him for the world. We've been friends all these years. Actually, me and his friendship is the longest friendship I think I've ever had. You know how people come and go? Oh, he didn't go nowhere, I didn't go nowhere. And that's the way it's gonna be until we hit the...
Later on, you know, after the Sly Five parted ways, you know, I began dancing around Boston as an aspiring choreographer. Anthony Thomas, in 1989, when Rhythm Nation came out, you know, Janet Jackson's breakout Rhythm Nation album with all the intricate choreography that Anthony Thomas brought, you know, to the table, and he himself was a breaker from Los Angeles. Like, that was it. I wanted to be Anthony Thomas all day.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So I'm here in Hollywood with the legendary Anthony Thomas. This is Keri D Singleton from the Keri D Radio Show. And we're about to do the routine that he's most famous for. You ready, Ant?
Ready to go.
I'm ready. Okay, ready?
7, 8, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
1992, in the midst of me being so-called in the back, I actually decided, you know, I want to be a rapper. And I'm going to make a song, and I'm going to make a video, about girls with tight jeans. It was supposed to be a damn joke, you guys, but Bleeders actually became a song, then a video, and then it actually became, ironically, one of the most popular videos locally in Boston for the summer of 1992.
So damn tight. Cruising in a car with the booming sound. Uh-oh, I roll the windows down. Standing on a corner with the eyes. A pair of Bleeders staring at me.
They first aired Bleeders on the local Boston hip-hop channel. I remember her sitting in the living room with my grandfather, my uncle, my sister. After the taping was over and I came back to the house and she looked at me and she shook her head, she said, "Boy, you sure know how to do whatever it is that you do, but you probably shouldn't do it." And we just laughed. And that was the beginning of my love affair with the camera. Shadow Jam Entertainment, my management company that started off with me signing a group of 4 kids called Smoothed Out from around my way in Roxbury. 4 kids, dance crew. Started off with them, and I took them, you know, all over the metropolitan area, wherever we could get shows, wherever we could get in front of an audience, I would take them. And then later on, like I would end up managing groups, Be Legit, Runaway Soldiers, lots of local artists who I really felt had a lot of talent, and I wanted to mold them and I wanted to see them shine.
Keri was a big brother and he was a mentor to all of us. He taught us not only about being good artists, but understanding the business side as well. Shadow Jam Entertainment to me was Boston's Motown. A lot of good artists and groups came from it. Salute to the Shadow Jam family and to Keri for bringing us all together. You know, I have to say it was probably the best time of my life being a part of such a great family. You know, salute, Keri.
Shadow Jam Entertainment soon became a magnet for local recording artists who wanted their own dreams of stardom realized. There was, in Boston's urban core, no shortage of self-proclaimed production and management companies.
But Shadow Jam Entertainment brought me a lot of pain. You know, when you manage an artist, you know, you're that person's best friend, their worst enemy, their big brother. And in some cases, you know, they're bail's bondsmen. You know, I had a couple of incidents where my artists, you know, some of them, they were all from the streets, you know, good or bad, they were all from the streets. And they all came with a lot of baggage. Some of them were still selling drugs while they was on stage, you know, and a lot of them, you know, got into trouble. My father was killed the day before Father's Day in 1996, and never, ever found out who was involved. To this day, it's still an unresolved case. And at any rate, I dedicated the party in his memory because my dad was, you know, he was a real devoted supporter of my music career. My mother was like, "Keri, get a job." You know, pursue your journalism, get a real job. That music stuff, you know, it'll come, you know, get a job. You know, my dad, he's like, no, he's gonna be the next Russell Simmons. And, you know, so when my father was killed, I felt like I wanted to honor his memory by having this, you know, this big private networking event in Boston, which I modeled after events that I had seen, you know, working in New York City as a street promoter with Arista Records and the TLC and Tony Braxton. A lot of the artists that I worked with while working with Arista Records. At any rate, I wanted to honor his memory, and I had this big party in Boston. I invited people from Philadelphia, from Connecticut, from New York City, from Rhode Island, from all over to come to this huge event at this loft on Farnham Street in Roxbury, as I said, across from where New Edition grew up. And a couple of the kids that I had managed, who I had stopped working with because they had gotten into a lot of scuffles and violence, you know, they came to the event and actually shot up the party. As I later learned, in an effort to embarrass me and to like destroy my career, you know, and there were in the shooting. Fortunately, there were no fatalities. There were some 400 people in the building. It was panic. You had all these people, you know, from different states that were in this, you know, tiny loft in Boston. All of a sudden, there's gunshots and there's gunfire, and people are panicking. That shooting incident, again, like thankfully nobody, you know, died. You know, there were, I think, 2 guys, 2 friends of mine were injured, not fatally, thankfully, prayerfully. You know, I was done. That was it. I was like, okay, you know, Boston, you got that. And I felt like, you know, this was the catalyst. This was the vehicle that I needed to get the hell out of Dodge. And in fall of 1996, you know, I told Boston, see you later, and I headed south with my best friend, who I was managing. He was a reggae artist named Dread. You know, we moved to Brooklyn. You know, said goodbye to Roxbury, hello Brooklyn.
Black suits fill the room. To whom it may concern, Junior Mafia is the clique. Act up, I have my honeys total busted.
That's right.
In the middle of the day now, baby, I seem to think of only you.
First time I met Keri up at the radio station in New York. But I tell you one thing is that when I went inside, he made me feel real comfortable. And it was just like he was just a real good dude. But I'm telling you, outspoken like a mug, make you laugh. Not gonna cut no corners with you, and he told her like it was, and it was just like, you know, from the door, if he didn't like you, he was gonna let it be known. So he was like, I like you, you know, you cool, and you could tell that he's no nonsense, so you know what I mean. Great dude, and I can honestly say that he definitely is on his grind, and he was one that said that to me, and you could tell because he was genuine, that whatever music you bring to me, I'm gonna play it, and you don't get that from a lot of people, you know. You get the, yeah, you know, just bring me your joint. Really, but I'm telling you, it's just like he was definitely a real dude on the grind about doing what it is for the community as well too. He's not just stuck on himself, but he reaches out to people, and he loves music, not what everybody else is doing, the wave, you know what I mean. Everything on the radio sound like one big song. Not Keri. You want good music? Check him out.
Keri D. Singleton began working for New York-based Palm Tree Records as a label's promotional representative.
So it's 1996, me and my best friend Dread, we done made it, we done left the little bean for the Big Apple. It's 1996, we lived in this trashy 3-story wooden house on Gates Avenue in Bushwick, Brooklyn. No heat, even though the landlord lived on the first floor, he was a bum, him and his wife. Anyway, but we learned the grind quick. We had to split chicken wings at the chicken spot. We was broke as hell. Broke. But I was working at Palm Tree Records.
Girl, Mr. Lover. Now Mr. Lover. She call me Mr. Bombastic, friendly fantastic. Touch me on me back, she says I'm Mr. Romantic. Call me fantastic, touch me on me back, she says I'm Mr. Smooth.
A couple of months after I got to New York City, man, they awarded me with this big gold and platinum plaque for promoting Shaggy's record. Shout out to Shaggy and Ray Vaughn for promoting his Boombastic album and single. Gold and platinum plaque that I had. I was so proud of it. You know, it was still, you know, a couple of months after my father had been murdered, you know. So now, the one thing that I'm thinking is I'm holding this damn plaque with my name on it from Virgin Records, courtesy of Palm Tree Records, is that my dad is not here to see this. You know, living in New York, it was an experience. I mean, Dread and I had just enough tokens to rub together to get a chicken sandwich and split it, go down to the Twin Towers, look at the buildings of the World Trade Center, and go back to Bushwick and listen to our battery-operated radio. We was looking foul, but we was happy as hell. I remember every day that we would freeze in that apartment, we would look at each other like, yo, this is rough. But do you want to go back to Boston? And we would look at each other, hell no. Definitely had enough of Boston after 1996. By 1998, reggae music had slowed down, and Palm Tree unfortunately closed its doors. And I had a choice to make. I could either, stay in New York City and hustle and look for other jobs at different radio stations and record labels throughout the city with, the experience that I had gotten from my years at Arista Records and Palm Tree. Or I could work a 9 to 5, and I didn't really like the whole 9 to 5 thing. That just wasn't really my day. 2002, at the age of 30, I landed a job at Power 105. Power 105 was, at the time, New York's newest hip-hop station. They were a rivalry station with Hot 97, and of course Hot 97 is an iconic rap station, globally, not just in New York City. They called me up and was like, hey, Keri, do you still want the job? And I was like, are you still paying? Hell yeah, I don't care if you play country music, and I worked for them for about a year. At the time that I was at the radio station, the morning show was headed with Ed Lover, Dr. Dre, Lisa G, and even Flavor Flav. He was doing the weather. I remember.
I mean, the weather's it's going to be kind of good today. You know what I'm saying? This is what we're looking at today. You know what I'm saying? Right over here, you know what I'm saying? Over here in Echo. Let's go to Echo, you know what I'm saying? Huh?
But even still, working in the promotion department at Power 105, I just didn't feel like I had the ability to be as creative as I wanted to. And so I actually met Wyclef Jean at an event that Power 105 had at the South Street Seaport. And long story short, I talked to Wyclef. I got to meet the designer, the head designer for 37 Deep. His name was G. And G hired me on the spot to work as 37 Deep's promotions director and coordinator. And that was my first time really being a boss. I had to make some decisions. As far as being in the music industry was concerned, it was all glamorous and everything, but I had to eat and I had to pay my bills. And I was left with only a few choices, either get a job or dip into some illegal activities. And I guess I didn't make the best of choices. Yes, so in 2004, I was actually in the process of putting together Peace Night. Peace Night was an event that was the brainchild of myself and a very dear friend of mine, Greer Tony, who owned the Shavu skating rink in Boston. It was the idea to put something together for the kids of Boston, particularly those that were, into shooting guns and things of that nature. We wanted to put something together that would inspire them to want to do something different. And so, Free from 106 and Park got involved. Leon, who's a world-renowned actor, one of my favorite actors. He's been in every movie from Waiting to Exhale to, every movie you could possibly think of. The 5 Heartbeats, The Temptations. He and I were going to do a spoken part, a spoken piece for this whole Peace Night documentary. And Dylon, who's a great recording artist, dancehall artist, we were going to be featuring one of his music videos. Well, Peace Night 2004 never happened. Then friend of mine, who I won't even name, had come to New York to hang out with me. we had previously parted ways. And the reason had actually been we were in a credit card ring together, he and I. When his visit to New York City was over, and I remember we went clubbing, we went partying, and on his last day we actually sat down together to talk about this peace night event that was going to be dedicated to my father once again. And then he asked me to go back to the train station with him so that he could go back to Boston. And he had used, of course, a stolen Amtrak ticket that I had purchased for him to get to Boston. We get to the train station and I'm immediately ambushed by a whole bunch of undercover Amtrak cops. Apparently it had been a setup. This gentleman had, you know, spoken to the police, the Amtrak police, and you know, coordinated this whole setup. So when I was arrested, I was wearing a t-shirt that had the number 4 subway logo because I had just moved from the Bronx to Brooklyn. And the 4 subway train, for those of you that live in New York City, knows that it runs from the Bronx to Brooklyn. And so I had a subway shirt that said 4, and it said Bronx to Brooklyn on it. And I remember the CO corrections officer at 111 Center Street called my name. I had been locked up for probably about a week or 10 days. And she called my name Singleton. And I thought, oh, wow, did I get bailed out? And she says, no, you're taking the 4 train to Rikers Island. And I guess she thought that was pretty funny. But the 4 train, for those of y'all that don't know, doesn't go to Rikers Island. No train does. Only the corrections van goes to Rikers Island. And to be going to Rikers Island, they say of all the bridges in New York City, Rikers Island is the longest bridge in the city because, you know, it takes the longest to cross from one side to the other. Not in terms of time, as in minutes, but in terms of months. And I sat on Rikers Island for 10 long months, you know, going back and forth to court over the setup that happened, which was the case that I was involved with, the credit card scam that I was involved with. As it turned out, after 10 months of being, you know, on Rikers Island, dealing with, you know, the gangs and the Bloods and the Crips and the fighting and the COs and the stabbings and all the craziness that goes along with being in custody, I took a deal. I pled to a couple of different charges, including identity theft and grand larceny, and I spent 2.5 years in a state prison. 2.5 very long years, which included a 10-month stay in the notorious Attica prison in western New York State. State prison at Attica, New York was just very oppressive, very scary. Every day, you know, you wondered whether you would be alive when it was lights out. And it wasn't necessarily the other inmates that you feared. It was the corrections officers. This particular officer pulled me out of the line just randomly and punched me so hard in my face that my lips split. And when I looked up at him, his answer was, "You're lucky, nigger. You know, the next time you'll end up in a hospital." And I think that my offense had been that I had looked at him. You know, that was Attica. It was very brutal. I eventually paroled out of Attica on January 2nd, 2007. And while on parole, I signed up for college. I decided to go back to school, and I went to a private school in Brooklyn called ASA College, and I graduated top of my class with honors, Phi Theta Kappa, and my major was criminal justice. Shout out to everybody at ASA, great school. We took all of my money, but it's all good. Most of my professors and fellow students didn't know that I had just got out of prison. You know, I remember they used to ask me, damn, you aced that test really good, Singleton. I'm like, yeah, well, you were studying criminal justice. I didn't need to read the book. No, you know, but society was not just an accomplishment in and of itself for myself, but for me, it was important that my mother, you know, feel a sense of pride after all that, you know, I've been through going on. That's the story of my life. I think it's always been, you know, one extreme to the other. That old dream came knocking at my door, and in 2013, I decided to, you know, go back into the music game, just give it one more shot and see if maybe the old spark was there. So I ended up co-hosting a radio show called The Independent Forum. It was a show on an internet-based radio station in New York City that was based on independent artists, rappers, singers, whatever, interviewing them. I became a co-host on that show, and actually, because of the success that I brought to that particular show, I was given my own show in early 2013 on the same network called the Keri's Corner Radio Show.
She's playing hard. She's playing hard today. She's playing. Cause she likes me. She likes me. She's playing hard today. She's playing. Cause she likes me. She likes me.
When we first got to Keri's Corner, it was pretty cool.
He's a fool. He's a damn fool.
we had a single.
Real
we
talk,
doing
man.
Kit Kat.
Felt like we was in home.
There was mad Kit Kats all over the place.
Yeah. Munchies were in effect.
Definitely.
So it was like, man, we went into the spot and homeboy had forethought.
Nice
What was going to happen before the show, and had the Kit Kats ready for a single that we had put out, and it felt like, you know, you go on a lot of radio shows, and sometimes hosts don't always do their homework. But you know, Keri being a fan and listening to the new stuff too, man. When he brought the Kit Kats out, it was like, all right, it's on. Game on.
He had them all over the table and all that.
It was break time.
Dope interview, man. We felt real comfortable, man.
We were talking about a different Kit Kat, but we ain't want all that over the table.
Yeah.
He's gonna be the sixth member.
That's what's up. Shout out to Keri, yo.
Around the same time, I also decided that I wanted to pursue my dreams of being a writer. So, you know, when I was 10 years old, you know, I saw my name in the newspaper, and I was like, I want that again. You know, I want my name to be associated with writing something positive. And so I put out my first book called The Wanderer's Game in 2013. It later became an award-winning book, and later after that became a Broadway play, which was sold out in 2015. And I can't explain the feeling of having your first book, you know, become a Broadway play on Broadway. That was a phenomenal feeling. The same day, as a matter of fact, that The Wanderer's Game came out on Broadway, I received a number of awards by a couple of New York State senators, some city council persons, for the Keri's Corner Radio Show, and it was all encompassing that the day that my book became a Broadway play, I should receive all these awards from the city of New York and the state of New York, saying what a great job I had done for New York. So it all came full circle, I guess. And and it's been a great ride. I can't really complain. I've had the honor of having some great people on my radio show, building some great relationships with artists that I loved as a kid. High Five, you know, I mean, one of my favorite singing groups when I was a kid, and now we're friends, you know what I mean? We hang out, we talk. Lisa Morgan, Melba Moore, I mean, Julia Robertson from Ex-Girlfriend, my favorite R&B group when I was a kid, and now I manage her, and she's, you know, working and doing great things with her singing partner, Norm Adams, and they're getting nominated for Grammys.
We met, obviously it was on the music tip, you know, but since then, you know, it's evolved, you know, and he's become one of my best friends.
Yo, check this out. I stayed up from night to day, hoping that you would get home, yeah. Oh, yeah.
From that, Keri was Ex-Girlfriend's fan club, part of the fan club. Keri's one of my best friends. Actually, he's one of my I have two male best friends, Norm Adams and Keri Singleton. We click together, that's just how it is. And ever since, and he's also my manager. Did y'all know? He is my manager. I love you, dude.
All these great people total. I mean, I never would have imagined that, you know, the bad boys or the bad girls of Bad Boy Records, you know, Pam and Kima would be cool.
My name is Kima. I met Keri, I actually think the first time I met Keri was here in Philly. He came out to support Pam and I in our movement, what we were doing, and he actually said, Kima, you know what? I don't like you. Sigh. No, he didn't say that. But, he's always just been very supportive, yes. And yes, you know, he supports Pam and I both together as Total and whatever we're doing separately. You know, he's not industry fake. You get a lot of people in the industry when you see them, when they see you, they like, yeah, money, whatever you want, anything. You call them, they don't get you the wrong number. That's not Keri. You do anything to support him. He's a bomb. He goes hard.
Yes, he does.
And we love him and we support him.
Mike Shannon, one of my favorite on-air personalities from Kiss FM and from Sirius XM. You know, now he's my Facebook buddy. We call each other, we hang out. So I think, you know, in all of my trials and tribulations, there have been triumphs. And I think that one of the many lessons that I've learned in my journey is that giving up is not an option.
Hey, what's up? This is Buddy White from the R&B group Intro, and I'm here to talk about my good friend Keri D. Singleton, who is one of the hardest but smartest workers in the business. I had the opportunity to work with him when I did the Keri's Corner radio show a couple years ago, but it seems like I met him before then. You know how to say, brother from another mother. Somewhere in the business, I'm sure I ran into him. What can I say? He's got his stuff together.
When I'm with you, I hear a song that makes me laugh and smile and sing to you.
Hey, what's up, y'all? This is your boy Keri D. Singleton with Intrigue Magazine, and I'm here with none other than the legendary crooner himself, Mr. Tony Terry. What's going on, brother?
You got it, bro. How you feeling?
I'm saying, it's good to see you.
Thank you, man.
Until the dawn, and we can walk through the night to the early morn. The morning I will take you around the hood on a gangster lean.
Hey, what's up? This is your boy Keri D. Singleton. I'm here with the legendary Adina Howard for Intrigue Magazine. We're going to talk to her very quickly because she got a show up in the Bronx.
Yes.
You never know where your road is going to lead. You never know what tomorrow is going to bring. You never know what the Creator has in store for you. You know, you don't know what His plan for you is. You don't know where your road is going to lead, and so it is important, it is incumbent upon you as a person to be faithful, to be loyal to yourself, to be loyal to your dreams, and never let anybody or anyone, including yourself, hinder you from moving forward. I think that my story, if it hasn't to date said anything else, it says that anybody can be anything they want to be. And if you just stick with it, you'll have a story to tell that's, you know, that has a silver lining, that has a bright side. So I felt the need to tell my story, not because I'm famous, not because I'm a celebrity, not because I'm living large, but because I know what it's like to be on various sides of the fence. And I've often asked myself, why did I have to go to jail? Why did my father have to get killed? Why did I have to experience all of the things that I had to experience? And I guess this is why. I had to have a story to tell so that you could hear it.
Oh,
it's that simple.
John.
That's it. That's all.
Any lyrics for this?
Playing hard to get over my damn heart.
Oh,
with that song. I liked it.
Scrap